Hello, welcome back, my weird friends. And if you're new here, my name's Jason White, and this is Jason's Weird Reads. And today I'm going to be doing From the Hip, number 23. And if you don't know what From the Hip is, it's basically, well, I mostly do my reading wrap-ups on my From the Hips. But what the From the Hip part is, where I just like to, I like to just talk about things that are going on in my life, and mostly in regards to my channel. And I just kind of shoot the shit with you for a little while. And then I go into the books that I'm reading, the books that I have read, and usually I save the TBRs for separate videos because it can get tediously long otherwise. So, what's been happening? This is the From the Hip part. I just want to talk a little bit about the consistency of my videos. Winter. Winter is hard, man. Winter is so hard. I want to know from you guys, what's winter like for you guys? Because I find that this winter, especially this winter, I don't know if it's always the same. Like, I think I find myself saying this every winter, especially this winter, that it's hard. Like, all I want to do is sleep and read and eat, and that's it. That's all I want to do. And so sometimes the videos get pushed back a little bit. So that, sometimes I'll have one video on 1 week. I like to have 2 videos each week, but sometimes there's only one. Other times there's 2. The tiredness issue isn't the issue, but this week there will probably be only 1 video, and that's, of course, this is like the week. This is Sunday the 4th, I believe. Yep, February the 4th. And so this week there'll probably only be 1 video. But getting back to winter and SAD, seasonal affective disorder, for me, okay, first off, let me say, I talk about this not to bitch and moan and to cry and look for sympathy. I talk about this in hopes that people who feel the same will find some sort of companionship and know that they're not alone. And so when I go so that's why I'm like, how does winter affect you? I don't necessarily hate winter, but I get very sleepy in winter. And like I was just going on about, I don't really want to do anything in the winter. I find that my energy comes in the summer, and it lasts throughout the fall. And you can kind of feel building up in the spring. I find that the longer you sit in the sun and soak up the sunlight, the more energy you get. Now, I've heard people say that get a UV light and shine it on yourself, and that's something I think I'm going to do maybe for next year. But this year I haven't. But man, do I ever want to sleep? It's so crazy. Like for a couple of weeks there, I that's all I wanted to do was sleep. I feel like a bear. And I remember saying at the beginning of winter, I believe this year, I was like, I envy bears because they get to hibernate, and I wish I could hibernate. I don't really want to actually hibernate, but your body starts kind of shutting down in a way. Things slow down, and it's almost instinctual that you just want to shut down and go to sleep. I don't feel sad. I don't necessarily feel sad. I don't feel the weight of dread that I used to feel. It's not really that kind of depression. It's more that I just don't want to do anything. I just want to sleep and read because I love reading. But yeah, sometimes making videos is kind of hard. That's basically all I want to talk about. I also wanted to mention, actually, the book drama involving J.D. Barker. That was really weird, wasn't it? You can kind of tell how far out of it J.D. Barker is. Like, I don't think he's really on social media at all. And so I did a TikTok video where I was like, didn't he have a soundboard or something? Like, how did he not know that him offering young TikTokers to send photos in the style that he wanted the photos done, so that he could use them as marketing, or at least review the book while like half naked, with the book covering their private parts. I'm questioning, how did he not know that was a bad idea? And I think I've come to a conclusion is that, you know, you never really see J.D. Barker online at all. I don't think he's really, like, this idea would have been kind of sketchy way back in the 90s. It may have flown okay in the 80s. I don't know. But I think maybe he's in his own little bubble and didn't realize that it's very distasteful. I'm not making excuses for him. This is like an actual thing that I'm trying to work out. Like, who comes up with this type of idea and thinks it's a good one? This is a great idea. It's not a great idea. Not even a little bit. So, you know, I saw one person on Facebook say that they feel bad for Dacre, is that his name? Dacre Stoker? Dacre? I feel bad for him too, because if you know anything about Dacre Stoker, who's I think either the nephew or the grandson, I believe he's the great-great-great-great-grandson of Bram Stoker. He wrote a few books himself, but he had J.D. Barker's help writing those books. So those books are kind of marred, you know. And I read one of those books, Dracul, I believe it was, and I didn't like it. But I kind of felt like two people wrote it, and two people did write it. Dacre Stoker, I don't know if he started the book and then J.D. Barker finished it, but there's a huge divide in the book. About quarter of the way through, it changes from being what I thought was genius to being utter crap. And I'm beginning to think, not because of the whole picture issue, but I'm beginning to think that Dacre probably, if I'm right, and Dacre wrote that beginning part, he probably should have just stuck with it instead of, like, you know, hiring on or getting somebody to help him finish it, because that was great stuff. And then it just went very mainstream and kind of silly, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. All right, so that's enough shooting the shit. I guess I've gone on for like 7 minutes here. I just want to mention before I continue that the book club choice for February is The Watchers by A.M. Shine. We're reading that right now, and I started it late in January, and I kind of flew through it. It's not necessarily a good thing, and I'll get to that in a moment. This is actually an interesting, the book club, Jason's Weird Reads book clubs. If you want to join up, the links are down there. It's on the Fable app. Go check that out. But I've had for 2024, I've had some interesting experiences with the book club, and I'm going to get to that soon in my what I've been reading section. But I'm going to move on now to what I'm currently reading, and I am currently reading The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist, because right now we have plans on talking on this channel early March when this book is released. It actually has the release date on here because this is an advanced reader's copy. The release date is March the 5th of this year. You can see it there. And I'm not very far in. I'm 55 pages in. And let me tell you, man, this book is incredible so far. I don't want to give too much away. I could read the back, but the print's really small on the back, and I'll probably stumble all over my words. So I'll just tell you exactly what I know right now about this book at page 55. So there won't be too many spoilers. But the main character, Talitha, she has an interesting name. The main character, Talitha, she survived something from her old hometown some years ago. And the town is restricted from people entering it because there's something very weird going on in that town. And she's approached by this company to go back in for research reasons. I don't trust this guy. I guess we'll find out. And she after some hemming and hawing over it, she decides to go back. And I'm going to leave it at that, because the imagination that's going into this is like a haunted house or haunted town type story, and it's very original. It's blowing me away so far. I absolutely love it, and I'm looking forward to talking to Gwendolyn about it once I'm done. I'm hoping that works out well, because she approached me actually, so I can't see anything going wrong, like her canceling, as often happens. As you may have noticed, some things go up and I say I'm going to do it, and then, you know, it doesn't happen because a lot of people tend to pull out, but that's neither here nor there. I love talking to Gwendolyn Keist. I've talked to her. This will be my third or fourth time. I'm pretty sure it's the third time that I'll be talking to her. I talked to her on the Darkness Dwells podcast, and we also talked on this channel for the Vestarian literary magazine, that panel that we had about a year ago. If I can remember, I'll post that up here, wherever it goes. I think it's here, and you guys can go check it out. But yeah, so The Haunting of Velkwood is, so far, it's very good. I think I might even, if it carries on with all the mystery and the weirdness and all that, this could be my favorite by Gwendolyn Keist. We'll have to find out. So Haunting of Velkwood, it's really, really enjoyable. And also, I'm continuing on my Stephen King journey with audiobooks, and I'm listening to Holly. Holly is the latest book in the Holly Gibney series, and I'm not too sure if Stephen King is going to continue writing Holly books, but I kind of hope he does. I really love the character of Holly, and in fact, she kind of reminds me a lot of myself. She's like the extreme version of myself, and I love that about her. So I'm hoping for more Holly, but let me tell you a little bit about what this story is about, and it's no secret. You find out very early on. It's about two elderly cannibals who are also professors or retired. I think one of them's retired professor, and yeah, they're sort of eating up the neighborhood, like literally. And I don't really know too much else about that. I think there is a very maybe sort of supernatural reason why they're cannibalizing people. There's mention of ritual, so I don't know. It's but so far it's very good, and I'm really enjoying it. Of course, the story itself is about somebody who goes missing, and it's because of these elderly cannibals. It's this weird saying, elderly cannibals. And Holly Gibney's hired to find out where this young lady went. And so far it's really fun. If it was a movie, it would probably play out well if it was a little bit of a B trash movie, maybe with some comedy. I don't know. Like it doesn't necessarily read that way, but you can't really picture this being adapted without some without some schlock to it, I guess. All right, so those were the books that I'm currently reading. Now, what have I been reading? That's a good question. So I started out the end of last year and the beginning of 2024. It was between Christmas and New Year's. Me and Jen, my wife, and Keenan, my son, we decided to go to the library, and I forget why. It wasn't to go look at books and to go sign out books. It was for some other reason. And I remember I just decided to go look at the books while we were there, and I ended up bringing home Daphne by Josh Malerman. And I was like, I'm going to read this, and I'm going to finish it hopefully by New Year's Day. And I started it that night because I was looking for a new book to read anyway, and I was on holiday, Christmas holiday. So I was like, why not, polish off a book by the end of the year, or at least have one for the beginning of next year. And I ended up finishing it when I wanted to. So I read Daphne by Josh Malerman, and it's kind of weird to me that this one is so on the fence. Like it's divided, I should say, not on the fence. People seem to either hate it or love it, and I'm of the camp that I loved it. There's a lot of basketball in it. Maybe that's the reason why. I know a lot of people bitched about My Heart is a Chainsaw because of the basketball in that. But I don't mind basketball. I like watching it. I'm not a huge basketball fan, like Josh Malerman is. If you read the afterword at the back of Daphne, you learn that he's an absolute huge fan of basketball. And so I think it's totally okay to incorporate sports into your fiction. So this is a slasher book. Daphne is very much a slasher book, and it follows a basketball team, young women in high school basketball team. And the interesting thing that I really enjoyed about this book was the intrusive thoughts and the OCD intrusive thoughts. They go hand in hand. In fact, I think they're the same illness. It's something that I've suffered with before. I really enjoyed, because the main character suffers from OCD and intrusive thoughts. And there's like, one of the examples is the whole story starts off with they're shooting hoops for practice, I believe. Oh no, it was a game. The main character, not Daphne. Daphne's the killer. The main character shoots from like I want to say it's three-point lane, but it's not. It's another point. But she basically shoots the hoop that wins the game. I should backtrack because a couple of nights before, kind of butchering this review. It's been about a month since I've read it, just over a month. Anyway, so the talk of Daphne, who is like the town's boogeyman, comes up, and so they're all sleeping over at this one of their teammates' house, and the story comes up, and they're all told the story about Daphne, and everyone gets kind of, freaked out about it. And so at that game, when she's at that point where she shoots the winning hoop, she thinks she thinks, will Daphne kill me when she shoots? And if the ball goes in, yes, Daphne will kill her. If she misses, Daphne will not kill her. So of course the ball goes in, and so our main character, our young lady basketball player here, starts to obsess about it, because every time they've done that before, when they've shot hoops and asked the net a question, whatever the answer was, yes or no, it would happen. So it was like prophecy when this happens. So of course each one of the girls on the team starts getting picked off one by one. They all realize that this Daphne thing might actually be real. So I'm going to leave it at that. I've rambled on about this book long enough, but I loved it. I want to read more Josh Malerman now. I've read 2 now. The Bird Box, or just Bird Box, I read that, and now Daphne, and I'm a fan. I love Josh Malerman. Next up, I read End of Watch by Stephen King. This is the 3rd Bill Hodges book, and it's also my least favorite of the series. I often criticize Stephen King for the endings of his books, because sometimes it just gets a little silly, and you lose that suspense of disability. Suspense of belief. It doesn't suspend your disbelief, is what I'm trying to say. That's what I feel about the endings of Stephen King's books. Now, this whole book feels like the ending of one of his books. It feels like it's just to wrap up the series. But, parts of it I did enjoy. There's things going on with Bill Hodges himself that are kind of sad and painful to watch, honestly, because I really loved Bill Hodges as a character. And Holly really shines through in this book. I think this is more of a Holly book. Or definitely this is where she starts to shine at least a little bit. It's just the overall story of what's going on that seems, I don't know, a little, I don't want to say silly, because it's not silly. It's not as good as the first 2 books. I think Finders Keepers is the second book, is my favorite. But I really enjoyed the first book, Mr. Mercedes, too. All right, next up is a book by Stephen King that blew my mind, and it made my my favorite books that blew my mind list that I released a little while ago, and that's The Outsider by Stephen King, another Holly Gibney book. she though doesn't come in until about the halfway to 3/4 mark. She's basically pulled in. I don't want to talk about this book too long, because I already gushed about it in that other video I just mentioned, and we're already at like 20 minutes here, so I gotta move on. But it's safe to say that this will, I think, go down as one of my favorite Stephen King books of all time. The thing that I loved about it was how the evidence piled up against this one character, the character who's been accused of murder, and the evidence is there that he like, it's almost, he was there. He committed the murder. His DNA is all over the murder scene. But during the time that kid was murdered, his DNA is also, not just DNA, but his, video evidence of him being away, in a different town. And just the way King builds this up, you get excited. At least I got excited. I got very excited. I was like, this is so good. Oh my God. It's like one of those books that you're just you're spinning. It's definitely it builds something up in you, and you just can't stop reading. I kind of flew through this book, and I didn't want it to end in a way. I just wanted that rush to continue, and to continue my Stephen King journey, and especially my Holly Gibney journey. Now I read If It Bleeds. I read the whole thing. I didn't go to the short story with Holly Gibney in it, which is the title of this collection. It's a collection of 4 novellas and the title is If It Bleeds, that novella with Holly Gibney in it. And surprisingly, it's not the best. It's the worst, I would say, story out of all four. That's my opinion. And that's not saying it's a bad story at all. I actually enjoyed the Holly Gibney story, If It Bleeds, within If It Bleeds. It's just not as fun and interesting as all the other stories. I really enjoyed every novella in here, especially the first one. I wish I should have wrote down the names of the stories. It's Mr. I'm going to call it Mr. Halloway's. I know it's not Halloway, but it's something like that. Mr. Halloway's Phone. That one I would say is my favorite because it had the most creep show feel to it, but it was also sort of a callback to one of my favorite Stephen King short stories or novellas, Low Men in Yellow Coats. It's just that father figure type of story where the main premise of the story is this young man gets hired by an old rich man from the town to read to him because he's old and he can't read as well as he used to be able to, and he likes being read to. So he hires this young kid. There's like nothing weird going on between them, nothing that the old man, and it's kind of funny because the father of the boy brings it up. He's like, he's not touching you in any way, is he? And the kid laughs. He's like, no, I wouldn't stand for that kind of crap. But anyway, so there's nothing weird going on there. The old man is genuine. He's rich as hell, and he just wants somebody to read to him. So they kind of form a bond, though. It's like the kid already has a father, but it's almost like he gets an uncle here in a sense. And when the old man dies, because of course he's going to die, the kid kind of misses him, and so he starts texting him. He texts this to him because during the story he gives him this one of his old cell phones. This is back in the time when the iPhone was like brand new. It was a whole new concept, and it was like blowing the world away. And so he introduces the old man to the iPhone for the stocks app and all that. And the old man kind of falls in love with it. And so when the old man dies, at the funeral, he sort of tucks the cell phone that he gave to him into the old man's shirt pocket. So after he's been buried, he starts texting him, and he gets these texts back. And that's the sort of creepy part. It's not just the creepy part, because every time he texts the guy, he's complaining about someone, and that person conveniently dies the next day. And that's like the creep show element, Twilight Zone type feel that I loved about it. So yeah, all the other stories were really great too, but I would say that Mr. Halloway's, whatever it's called, cell phone or phone, was the one that hit it out of the park for me. Next up, I read Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. This book is absolutely bonkers in the best way possible. It's about a small Scottish town. I want to say Scottish town. I hope I didn't get that wrong. That's basically, it's dying. There's not too many people left in this town, and it has this curse, this old witch that was burnt. No, they didn't burn her at the stake. It's in the very first chapter. They invade her home and they butcher her and her unborn baby, which is a pretty horrific scene in itself. And then they bury her right by her cabin, and so that place becomes haunted. And you follow four good friends. They don't really have anything to do because, like I said, the town is almost dead. There's a lot of empty lots, a lot of empty houses. There's nobody living there anymore, and except for they're the only like teenagers, young adults who live there. And so this young American woman comes hitchhiking through town. She decides to stop at the bar where they like to hang out. It's a bar in a bowling alley, and they decide to go to impress this young lady from America. They decide to go visit Maggie's grave for shits and giggles. But what they don't know is that this is the night where there's a ritual being taken place, and Maggie is going to come back and wreak havoc. That's where I'm going to leave that. But I want to mention this has one of the most horrific deaths I will never be able to forget, and it sends shivers up my spine, and it makes my hips ache every time I think of that death. it's a really good book. It entertained me, and I flew through it. Can't recommend that one enough. Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. All right, next up was the first book of the year for my Jason's Weird Reads book club, and it was The Reddening by Adam Neville. I struggled with this book. I struggled a lot, and I complained about it in the club itself, and I even DM'd Rachel from Shades of Orange, asking her for advice, because I really wanted to DNF this book. I did not want to finish it, but I ended up pushing through, and I'm kind of glad I did. This book has a lot of gore in it too, but what really pulled me back with The Reddening was the writing style. It's almost as though Adam Neville was going for like an old H.P. Lovecraft sort of feel to it. And I don't know if that's what he was doing, but the prose is very purple, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily make sense. Like his similes and whatnot will just kind of go over my head, or they just don't seem to work for me. And but in all honesty, though, I enjoyed the story, and so that's kind of what helped me pull through. There's some nasty things that happen in this book. There's basically the premise for this book is a group of people separately sort of find this old cave that has people kind of like living in there, and they're painted red, and they're like cult members, and they do horrible things to people that they catch. I'll just leave it at that. There's one thing that I really enjoyed about it, is that this book kind of reminded me a little bit of that. Other books have reminded me of this recently, or maybe I was just talking about this book somewhere else, but there's this Hungarian film called Baskin, and that movie is seriously messed up, and it kind of has a similar feel a little bit. If you ever watched Baskin, that Hungarian horror film, and read this book, The Reddening by Adam Neville, tell me if I'm not off my knocker on here on this one. Tell me what you think. All right, next up, I got The Folly by Gemma Amor. I DM'd her on TikTok asking her for a free copy, and I told her that I would review it on TikTok and here, and so I already reviewed it on TikTok, and I'm talking about it here as well. I really enjoyed The Folly. This is her latest novella release, and I absolutely loved it. It's so strange. It's very strange, and it's sort of fashioned after a Daphne du Maurier novel, or Daphne du Maurier's style, I should say. And I've only read one, and that was Rebecca, so I can't really compare, but it did have like a Daphne du Maurier feel, but I also felt like it had a Shirley Jackson feel to it as well. The story is about this young woman. Actually, I don't think she's young. I think she's more like middle-aged. She's nearing middle-aged anyway. Her father has been sent to jail for the murder of her mother, but she maintained while he was in jail, her name is Morgan, by the way. Morgan maintained that her father was innocent, and she fought for his release while he was in jail. And the story starts with her father being released after something like 7 years being in prison. He's being released on like good behavior, and maybe her defending him and fighting for his release helped as well. And she brings him back to their place where the murder happens, because it happened at home. And the next day she announces to her father that she managed to score free rental at this Folly. The Folly is basically on the cover. It's something that people over in the UK and Scotland and whatnot will recognize. They were basically built for, from my understanding anyway, by rich people to look good, to look interesting anyway. They're cosmetic buildings, but you can live in them. And so I guess the owner of the Folly just wants somebody to stay there, to keep the place up and to keep vandals out. And so she's basically hired with free rent and free food to go and stay there. And so she takes her father there. that's where the strange things start happening. And let me tell you, things really do start happening that are very strange. And it was just such a weird little book. There's some things that happen in this book that you're like, what the hell's going on? You're like, I have to digest this. And the ending, you're struggling with trying to figure out what's going on. It's not that it's overly confusing, but it's very sort of dreamlike, and the narrative is untrustworthy as all shit. So you don't know exactly what happens. It's kind of ambiguous, and I love it. It's very fascinating. I don't really want to get too much into it because I'm just going to butcher it more. But it's a great little book. It's only like 140 pages, and I flew through it. I was enjoying my time so much. Next up, I read This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer. This is her debut novel, and it's kind of a cross between the Blair Witch Project and the Dyatlov incident that happened during the 1950s in Russia, where a group of cross-country skiers went missing and then were found like a month later in very mysterious circumstances and dead, obviously. If you don't know about the Dyatlov Pass incident, I highly recommend looking it up, because you just might find yourself down a very, very deep rabbit hole that will make your mind explode with the possibilities of what happened. Anyways, this book follows that in a sense. It's about these rock climbers, ambitious rock climbers. One of them just got a new deal with like a sporting equipment, a company that makes a lot of rock climbing equipment, and so she wants to prove herself to them. And also another rock climber who his passion is to find new places to climb. And so you get a lot of climbing in this, and there's a lot of jargon, and I really enjoyed that. Okay, the book starts off with one of the main characters in like a plane, and they're scouting the ground below them looking for new places to climb, and they come across this one that reminds everyone of another climbing mountain. And so they decide to go investigate, because it might be a new place, and if it is a new place and it's as good as it looks on their equipment, it's going to put this one rock climber on the map for he's gonna be famous for finding this place. So they all go out there, and what they don't know is that this place is a trap. It's a serious trap. There is something going on in this valley, in this dense area of woods, and they find the rock, and they kind of go in, they kind of ignore all the signs that this is a bad idea. Like they get lost a couple of times while they're trying to find the mountain, and they find themselves sort of circling around each other, just like you see in the Blair Witch Project, where they're walking for like a long time, and they find themselves in the exact same place where they started. That becomes a huge theme in this book. It happens over and over again. But like I said, they kind of ignore these types of little things that are happening like that. They make it to the rock, and they start climbing, and they build their camp. They're planning on being there for like a couple of weeks at least. And on like the second day, I believe, there's an accident that leaves one of their members seriously hurt, with like a broken foot and a concussion, a serious concussion. So they have to get him out and back to a hospital somewhere, and the problem is they can't get out. This is where they start to realize there's something seriously wrong with this place. And I'm going to leave it at that, because this book, it's really interesting. I really enjoyed myself. There's a few things in here that maybe I would have changed if it was my book, but I was perfectly okay with reading it. It is kind of spooky. I felt that maybe it leaned a little bit too hard on the Blair Witch issue of not being able to find your way out of the woods and finding yourself right back to where you started. But honestly, that's kind of where the story kind of needed that in a sense. I don't know how she would have been able to change that, for example, but overall this is a really good book. I gave it 4 stars. It was released just last month, and I recommend it to anyone who likes the Blair Witch and also likes to speculate on what happened to those poor cross-country skiers on the Dyatlov Pass incident. So definitely this. And finally, I made it to the last book that I accidentally finished before February even started, because it's the February pick for the Jason's Weird Reads book club, and it's The Watchers by A.M. Shine. Now this book here, it involves a young woman who's, I forget where she's going, honestly, but her car breaks down and she finds herself stuck in the woods with a group of people who are trapped by these watchers who stare at them and will kill them if they step out of bounds. They're trapped there. They can't escape, but they do end up finding out some things as to what's going on, and I'm going to leave it at that. Honestly, this book was a big meh for me. I had a lot of trouble paying attention to it, and it's kind of weird because I did fly through it. You would think that I enjoyed it, but I really don't understand the appeal of this book, honestly. Nothing spectacular seemed to happen, in my opinion. Like, I know a lot of people enjoy this book, and it's actually being adapted for the big screen by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, which is really exciting. But this book felt really flat to me. I kind of enjoyed some of the things that happened at the end, some of the spins, when you find out what's actually going on. That was pretty interesting, but up until then, it just felt like a weird sort of fairy tale. And so I was kind of bored, and I just kind of wanted to keep reading it so I could say I finished it for the book club. And so, yeah, big meh for me. I did not really enjoy it. I'd give it like a hard 3.75 star rating. So that has been my January. Let me know what the books that you enjoyed reading in January, deep down there in the darkness. And if you made it this far, because this video went far too long, if you made it this far, leave me some witches. Let's see if witches are actually a thing on here. Yes, there are witches. So I'll show you the little witch emoji. You can search for emojis while you're typing things. Unless you're on the computer, it doesn't work as well there. But yeah, leave me some witchy emojis deep down there in the darkness if you made it this far. Keep being safe and keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.